Thin roll, lower back. Teeter totter, shoulders go down, pelvis is lifted. And you keep your pelvis lifted, okay? That roll is across your lower back. It should be just higher than your pelvis, just lower than your rib cage. And if it's just more towards the side of your pelvis, even a little bit better. So, first things first, the muscles in your lower back. Again, just like resetting those reactive systems, your muscular system is another thing we need to work on resetting. When the muscles hold on to tension and grip and brace, they're not very functional, okay? We need the muscle to know how to contract and how to relax. And here's the thing. If you can get your muscles to functionally contract, they relax easier. So you don't need to work on the relaxation as much. Okay? It's not about just stretching a tight muscle. Okay? It's about getting it to become functional again, which is what happens in the lower back because our lower back loves holding on to tension. So this roll right across your lower back. If the muscles are cranky and going, no way, we're not letting go, we're still trying to protect you, that's okay. Just listen to them. Just give them some time. Pay attention to your exhale. Feel how your feet are connected to the ground. They're part of your foundation. Feel how that section of your lower back is connected to the ground. There's a roll underneath you. It is supporting you. Under your shoulders, the back of your head, that's connected to the ground as well. Hands can be resting on your lower ribs because when we create the movement, your body will try to compensate by lifting the lower ribs rather than moving in the lower back. So, hanging out right here and start just allowing your tailbone to drop down over that roll. It doesn't need to move very far. All we're trying to do is get a little bit of movement in that lower back to get the muscles to realize they need to change in some way. So that tailbone drops down. And then you can use your legs, bring your pelvis back up to where that starting position was. Starting position now should be, hopefully, a little more comfortable. Dropping your tailbone down again. This time, I want you to try and use that abdominal space. Remember that lower abdominal space, trying to get your pubic bone to come up towards your belly button. It's like that little reverse crunch. And then you're going to drop that tailbone down again. Now keep moving right there, moving your tailbone up and down nice and slow, noticing how you can use your legs, your glutes to control the movement, but you can also use your abdominal muscles. When we have back pain, hip pain, okay, even knee pain, even shoulder pain, the lower back does that grippy thing. And when it grips, and because you've likely heard the phrase, okay, a strong core protects your back, we hold on to that grip and we brace and we grip lots, okay? So with that, we need to get the muscles doing a bit of movement. When we hold that tension so much, The body forgets that we can actually move in our lower back. It's not a lot of movement. We don't need to become contortionists, but we do want a little bit of movement. Okay? So getting that movement and learning how your glutes, your legs, and your core help to stabilize that movement. Oh, good. It's recording. Good. Now, letting that tailbone drop down. Noticing the muscles in the lower back. We're going to now functionally use the muscles in the lower back, okay? That means bring your feet in a little bit closer towards you. They don't need to be super close to each other, but closer towards you so that you can, from your belly button, start to gently lift. When you start to lift, it's not that you're lifting off the roll. It's that as you start to lift, your lower back goes, oh, I need to work. That's when you get those muscles to functionally contract. Don't lift too high. Don't lift off the roll. I want you to keep that connection to the roll so that as you exhale, you can feel how those muscles relax. So you are now in control of contracting those lower back muscles with that little easy lift and then exhaling and letting them relax. The roll is under you for feedback. It's great if we could do this without the feedback portion, without the roll under the lower back. It's not as easy though, okay? And the other thing is when we have back pain, the sensations in our back, they dissipate so much that it's really hard to actually feel more specifics. And if we can build in that specific sensation, we're going to do a lot better. And it doesn't make sense at first because we're like, we have enough sensation in this area. We don't want more, but we need to rebuild those connections. So after doing that a few times, you've heard me say before in the past, if you notice one side's doing more than the other, we want to work towards balance. Today though, we're going to move on a little bit. You're going to lift all the way up into little bridge. So lift, 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 lift high enough. You can pull the roll out from underneath you. Good. From here, keep that lift, okay? Lift as high as you can. And if you're going to be traveling on an airplane anytime soon, this is a really good one to do afterwards or even before because it's the opposite of sitting for a long period of time. You're going to slowly lower down one vertebra at a time. And you're going to get your lower back to the floor really flat. And I want you to press your lower back into the floor really, really, really flat. Keep pressing it. Notice how your core has to work to do this. Okay, our spine is meant to move by pressing the lower back into the floor really, really flat. Now I want you to relax the muscles. Just relax, just lay there. Ideally, a little arch comes into your lower back. If it doesn't, that's okay. We can work on that. It's just about building strength and movement, okay? But ideally, there's a little arch that happened in your lower back. Now, with that little arch that happened in your lower back, start pointing your tailbone down towards the ground a little bit. And I want you to take your hands onto your thighs and drag your fingers down to your hip sockets. And I want you to feel that the more you press your tailbone down into the ground, and you can take your hands onto your thighs again, drag them down into those hip sockets. I want you to feel that your leg bones, your femurs, sink right down into those hip sockets and they connect into that hip socket. And you can do that a few times, just feeling how the more you press your tailbone into the ground, the more you can sink your femur heads, that hip socket, in. And that's going to help to reduce some tension that you hold around the hip. itself, because you're going to keep that tailbone pressing down into the ground. You're going to grab your black strap and you're going to hook it over your right knee. Do not lift your leg. Your leg is now dead weight. Your arms control your leg. You loop it over your right, tailbone presses down into the ground. We gently lift that right leg. Your hands are controlling that right leg. Do not let the muscles in your right hip do any of the work. If they do, okay, you have to find that range of movement where you can start letting go of that hip socket so that your arms do all the controlling. Yeah. You're going to gently use your hands, place that right foot back on the ground. Keep that tailbone pressing into the floor. Loop that strap over your left knee. Left leg. Start bringing that up with your hands. Do not use your hip muscles. Do not use any leg muscles. This strap is completely supporting that left leg. Okay? Depending on your hip socket, you may have a lot of range of movement. You might have a little bit of range of movement. That range of movement, you can even rotate at your knee joint just by kind of pulling one hand versus the other for a little bit of rotation in the hip. You can take the hip out to the side a little bit. You can draw it towards you a little bit. But the entire time, you are controlling that leg. You're going to take your foot, plant it back on the ground. Keep your tailbone pressing into the floor. Okay? Keep that tailbone pressing into the floor. Press it into the floor even more, because I want you to imagine there are now 1,000 helium balloons attached to your knees, and you are going to float your feet off the ground. And your feet float just high enough that your socks still touch the ground, but your feet are not touching the ground. Okay, your feet may feel magnetized to the ground. That's okay. Hanging out there. You're going to place your feet back on the ground. Feet are grounded from your belly button, which there should be a nice little arch in your lower back, but from your belly button, you're going to lift up into little bridge. So you're lifting, 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 pressing with your feet towards your shoulders. Hanging out right here. Feel anchored through the base of your neck. From the base of your neck, start slowly lowering down, one vertebra at a time. Try not to let your shoulders do the movement. Shoulders are relaxed. Your neck is relaxed too, but you're going to notice your neck starts to arch at a certain point. Totally fine. We're lowering all the way down. As you lower down, your lower back presses down into the floor. I want you to flatten, flatten, flatten your lower back. Keep it super flat. Notice what you need to work to hold it there. Then you release that. Let that go. Feel how your pelvis moves into a more neutral position. You now have that nice little arch in your lower back. You're going to press your tailbone down into the ground gently. Doesn't need to be a lot. Not as much as when we're floating the feet. It's just a connection. Take your strap one more time. Loop it over your right knee. Gently bring that right knee up. Your arms control your leg. Do not let your leg do any of the work. That's the tough part. Because when we hold on to tension, whether we're protecting a knee joint, an ankle joint, a hip socket, a shoulder, your lower body, okay? And in Pilates, I think they call it like the powerhouse area, which is like your thighs, your hips, your lower core space, okay? It is your powerhouse. That's your stability. That's the main way that we get movement through the body. So It loves to hold on to grip. We want it to be functional. We want it to work when it needs to work, and we want it to relax when it can. Place that right foot gently on the floor. Take that strap, loop it over your left knee. You do this movement with your arms. Draw that left knee up. Bring a little bit of jiggle into that hip. Okay, that hip socket, if it wants to do the work, just hold still. You don't need to do too much movement. Just let that leg feel heavy into that hip socket. Good. Maybe notice one side is different than the other. That is totally possible. Remember, we are not symmetrical. However, we can work towards it. What you're going to do is take that left leg, plant it back on the ground. Tailbone is going to press down into the floor more, not your lower back, but right to that tailbone. That engages those deeper muscles in the lower back. It also helps connect you to your pelvic floor. Your feet are now going to float. If it's fairly comfortable floating your feet, you can take that right leg, extend it out. If you want, bring that right leg right back in, and then extend your left leg out. Maintaining that connection with that tailbone. Bring that left leg in, hang out here, feet are still floating. And then feet plant on the ground. Wiggle it around a little bit and roll over onto your side.